Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at the VHU, the Military History Institute in Prague in the Czech Republic. And we're taking a look at some cool experimental Czech pistols. Today we have the CZ-531. Now this was developed as a replacement for the VZ-52 pistol. And it's funny that we can joke today that the VZ-52 pistol was really not a very good design. And the Czechs actually knew it right when they adopted it. In fact, the decree that ordered the adoption of the VZ-52 actually simultaneously ordered the beginning of development of its replacement. And its replacement was supposed to be a pistol specifically based on the TT33 Tokarev design, which is to say, based on John Browning's design. So two different designers got to work developing replacements for the VZ-52. This one was done by two designers at Strakonice. One of them was František Miška, whose name comes up quite a lot in Czech firearms design. He's one of this small core group of Czech designers who were doing all sorts of interesting projects. And on this project, he was assisted by another designer by the name of Ulrich Latzina. And like I said, they were working at Strakonice, and they put together what is essentially sort of a hybrid Tokarev 1911, but with a Czech flavor to it. Now, before we go further, I do want to make a note here about the designations of these Czech prototype guns. So this is CZ-531, and in this case, the CZ refers to Česká Žebrovka. That is the name of the company operating in Strakonice. It's essentially Czechoslovakian firearms manufacturing, which isn't very specific, and that's why you have a lot of these companies that have very similar sounding names and share some words. The 531 indicates that it is a 1953 design, and it's the first one by the factory. So 530, if they had a new pistol after this in 53, it would be the CZ-532. Now, the other companies had slightly different naming conventions, but in general, when you see, you'll see three-digit designations for Czech Cold War era firearms, and generally the first two are going to be the year, and the second one is going to be the iteration, like the iterative design of that year. So, with that said, let's take a closer look at this 7.62 Tokarev caliber Czech 1911. I mean, there's just something really cool about the uncanny valley of 1911s here. Honestly, this almost has a SIG P210 vibe to it, to me. Of course, the grips and this distinctive single clamp spring are very reminiscent of the VZ-52, which of course had just been adopted when this started its development. But we have an exposed hammer. It is a single action pistol, although like the Tokarev, it does not have a manual safety on it. You have a half-cock notch that you can use if you would like a manual safety, but doctrine would have been to carry this with the chamber empty. Not uncommon in military circles, certainly at that time. Magazine release is here on the heel. We have a magazine that looks almost exactly like a VZ-52 magazine. However, it is just one round shorter. So this holds 8 rounds of 7.62x25 Tokarev, not interchangeable with the VZ-52. To disassemble it, we're just going to bring the slide back to here. We'll line up the slide stop pin right there. There we go, we'll pop that out and then remove it all the way. And now I can pull the slide right off the front of the gun. By the way, we have our markings here, which I neglected to show you before. RID is the 3-letter factory code for the Strakonice plant where this was made. 531 is the designation, and 3 is the serial number of this example. They only made a couple of them. You can then pull out the recoil spring and guide. It is not captive, and this one, by the way, appears to have cracked during testing, so that should be completely enclosed, but it's broken. And this is a bushingless slide, so the barrel just tilts down, comes out the back, and that's all we have there. 2 locking lugs up in the top. There is no retaining plate in the back. Instead, we have this screw. If I rotate that 90 degrees, it comes out. It's actually not a screw, it's just a pin. And then I can pull out the firing pin and its spring. We have two swinging links here. We have locking lugs that completely encircle the barrel. Not so much like the very first Tokarevs, but like the standard production TT33. And then getting to the frame, we have a removable fire control unit, just like a Tokarev or like the Petter pistols. So everything's completely enclosed in there. If anything goes wrong with the hammer mechanism, you just pull this out and you can replace it very easily. So stirrup trigger back there. We can now remove the grip panels. You have to basically pry off this C-clamp sort of spring. There we go. So that comes off, and then we get two rather laboriously shaped grip panels. Like there's actually a lot of woodworking on the inside of those two. And then the bare frame here. So there is, like the 1911, there is a flat spring in the back, but it's just a single spring, and all it does is act as a trigger return spring. And then this piece of wire is just a lanyard loop that hangs down behind the magazine catch. So actually I should say this flat spring is dual purpose. It's a trigger return spring, and it also provides tension for the magazine catch down there at the bottom. And there you go. There is the CZ-531 Czech take on a Tokarev or a 1911 or perhaps a P210, whichever you think is most appropriate, but there it is, all field stripped. Testing on both the CZ-531 and its competitor, the ZKP-524, took place in February of 1954 and didn't go really quite perfectly. So the 531 here, after about 2,000 rounds, the recoil spring started to fatigue, started to cause problems. They replaced that, continued shooting it. At about 4,500 rounds, they had a crack on one side of the frame. They kept shooting it. At like 5,075 rounds, they had a crack on the other side of the frame, and that's about as far as things went. They were shooting about 5,000 rounds through each of these pistols. Now, both of the guns in the trial, it's hard to talk about one without referencing the other. And by the way, I will have a video on the 524 as well. So if you're interested, you can check out that one for the other half of this story. But both guns had issues. They both had some pros and some cons. The 531 here was deemed the pistol that was more manufacturable, but it was also the less accurate of the two. So a little bit of back and forth. And then ultimately what happened was they realized, like, we don't really have the money to just continue development and produce a whole new pistol to replace the VZ52, which we literally just adopted 2 years ago. And you know what? It's just a military pistol. It's really not that big a deal. There are far more important pieces of equipment to spend the available money on. So there were some really kind of weird decisions made by the Czech military around this time period. And the idea of, we're going to adopt the VZ52, even though we know it's a kind of terrible gun, and we'll just start working on its replacement immediately. Like, not maybe the most efficient decision, but it's what they went with. And then they scrapped the second half of the plan by ultimately not following through and not replacing it at all. Well, they did replace it, but it would be about 25 years before they replaced it. So very cool to get a chance to take a look at this. One of just a couple original prototypes made. And man, it really is this very, very neat hybrid of Czechs, like distinctively Czech small arms, like the grip spring, but also very clearly influenced by the Tokarev with the removable fire control group, and frankly, handling like a 1911. Very cool pistol. I'd like to give a big thanks to the VHU for giving me access to this to film for you guys. They have a fantastic small arms museum here as part of the Institute. If you happen to find yourself in Prague, traveling here, definitely plan to take at least half a day to spend in the museum. Lots of cool exhibits, lots of cool prototype guns on display, as well as the sort of standard issue stuff you would probably expect to see. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.